Hey everybody, Coach Michael here from the Roofstock Academy, coming at you from back in Aspen, Colorado. What I wanted to talk to everyone about today is how much house can you actually afford given your cash position? And I think there's this misnomer out there that, hey, if I go to buy a $100,000 investment property, all I need is $20,000. That's my 20% down payment, and I'm good to go. That's not quite the case, is the unfortunate truth. So that's one component of how much cash you're going to need, and it's going to help you develop and determine how much property you can actually afford. So first is your down payment. So we're going to kind of work backwards. So we start with the sale price, and then we're going to take at a minimum 20%. A lot of lenders right now, because of COVID, are actually requiring 25% down as opposed to 20. And so when you go get a mortgage, they'll refer to that as a 75% loan to value mortgage as opposed to an 80%. So let's just assume you have a great lender. They're willing to give you an 80% mortgage, meaning you got to come up with your 20% down payment. Well, on top of the 20% down payment, a lot of lenders are going to require you to have reserves. And what the reserves are basically money that's sitting in cash that can be used to pay the mortgage payment, principal and interest, also likely taxes and insurance. That's called your PITI. That's an acronym for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. They want to see anywhere between 3 to 6 months of extra cash sitting in the bank so that they know if your tenant stops paying rent or you don't get a tenant in place for a couple months, you can still make the mortgage payments for several months on that property without getting into dire straits. So we've got your down payment, 20%, 25%. Layer in your 3 to 6 months reserve. I would underwrite it with 6 months because that's what I've seen a lot of lenders require. Then on top of that, you're going to have your closing costs. And closing costs are usually a function of the title and escrow company as well as the lender. And so many of you who have purchased real estate before may have heard of something called points. It's a fee tacked on to the loan. It's just a percentage of the actual loan amount. And so that can vary from no points up to multiple points. Some lenders will actually give negative points or lender credits, where basically they're giving you a credit back to close the loan. If you're using leverage and you're going to have a lender, there's going to be closing costs associated with the mortgage. And then there's also going to be closing costs associated with the title and escrow company that you're using. The biggest differentiator or the biggest delta is typically going to be the size of the loan and the lender themselves. And so if you look at your closing statement, your estimated closing statement, or if you've already purchased property, you're doing this retroactively and looking at your closing statement, you'll see line item charges charged by both the title and escrow company as well as the lender. And you'll see origination fee, title exam fee, all these different line item fees. And once you add all of those up, those are what's known as your closing costs. And so we can estimate those from anywhere between 1%, if it's an all cash deal, 1% of the deal, all the way up to maybe 5% of the deal, depending on how expensive and how many closing costs there are with your given lender, assuming you use a mortgage. So let's review. We've got our down payment, we've got our reserves, and then we've got our closing costs. When you sum all of that up, that's the amount of money you need to do one particular deal. And so as the deal purchase price fluctuates and changes, as will the actual dollar amount that you're going to need to go do that deal. There are a lot of people out there that say, bring your 20% down. That's all you need. You can invest in a $100,000 property with 20 grand down. If you're planning on using a traditional mortgage, traditional in the sense of the word, meaning you bring 20%, the mortgage is 80%, you're going to need a little bit more than actually just the 20% down. And so I would encourage everybody out there to start talking to lenders. If you're interested in investing in real estate, start talking to lenders out there just to get an idea of what closing costs look like for a ballpark dollar amount of the purchase price. Say, hey, this is kind of where I'm thinking. I've got my 20% down payment. I can afford $100,000, $150,000 house, whatever it is. And start asking them, okay, based on today's rates, because they will fluctuate over time. So you can get a quote today for closing costs, and it might be very different than the actual number you get when you come time to get the mortgage. But just try to get a general understanding of where things are, what fees that particular lender charges, so you can start piecing together and reverse engineering, how many dollars do I actually need in my pocket to do this deal? And then again, remember, based on the size of the loan, that's going to dictate what your principal and interest payments look like. Then we can add that 6 months in to pad our cushion, to pad the cash needed to do the deal. Now, the nice thing is that a lot of lenders will actually look at retirement accounts and brokerage accounts and consider those cash or semi-cash equivalents. So if you're someone that has your 20% down payment in a bank account sitting there ready to go, but you don't have that extra 6 months in that bank account, maybe it's in a stock account or a bond account, the lender might actually consider that as cash. So remember, you got to have your down payment, whether it's 20 or 25%, depending on your lender. You've got to have your 6 months reserved for PITI. The lender is going to require you 3 to 6 months, but I call it 6 months. Your closing costs, you're going to need to have those set aside as well. And then last but not least is your personal reserve account. So that rainy day fund, call it, for if something goes sideways and you need to make a big ticket repair. If these are helpful, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment in the comment section. Let us know what other things you want to hear about. Thanks so much for watching. Happy investing.